They say history is written by the victors, but what if the truth was buried with the fallen? Every secret leaves a trace, if you know where to look. This is The Broken Truth, decoding history, one broadcast at a time. The Broken Truth podcast, where history meets conspiracy. Every case tells a story, every story hides a lie.
There is a place on Earth where time stops. It is a continent of silence, a white desert larger than Europe, where the temperature plunges to 130 degrees below zero. It is a place where no human being was ever meant to live. It is a place that, according to every history book on every shelf and every university in the world, was completely unknown to mankind until the year 1820. We are told that for the entirety of human history, through the rise of Babylon, the glory of Rome, the golden age of Islam, the Renaissance, this continent sat in darkness, invisible, unseen, and unmapped. To the ancients, it was a myth, Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, a hypothetical counterweight required by physics to balance the landmasses of the north, but never seen and never touched. But what if the history books are wrong? Not just slightly wrong, not just missing a detail wrong. What if they are fundamentally, catastrophically wrong about the timeline of human civilization? Because there is a document that shouldn't exist. It isn't a stone tablet found in the mud. It isn't a whispered legend. It is a physical object, cataloged, stamped, and stored in a museum. It was drawn in the year 1513 by an admiral of the Ottoman Empire. It details the coast of South America with an accuracy that wouldn't be matched for 400 years. It shows rivers in the Amazon that European explorers hadn't found yet. But if you follow the coastline down, past Brazil, past Argentina, past the tip of Tierra del Fuego, the map doesn't stop. It curves eastward. It shows a coastline that runs across the Southern Ocean. It shows Antarctica. But it doesn't show the Antarctica we know. It doesn't show a jagged wall of ice. It shows bays, it shows islands, it shows rivers flowing into the sea, it shows mountains that are currently buried under a mile of solid glacial ice. To draw this map, someone had to see Antarctica before the Ice Age. Someone had to map it when it was green. Geologists tell us that the last time Queen Maud Land was free of ice was at least 6,000 years ago, long before the invention of writing, long before the first wheel turned in Mesopotamia. So ask yourself, who was flying over the Antarctic coast 6,000 years ago with the trigonometry required to draw this map? The map is real, the timeline is broken, and the truth is buried under the ice. Welcome back to the Broken Truth podcast. This is the show where we don't just accept the narrative, we dismantle it. We take the suppressed documents, the anomalous artifacts, and the forbidden history, and we lay them out on the table. We are here to explore the edges of the map, where the dragons used to be. I'm your host, Garrett, and today we're conducting a forensic audit of human history. We're looking at the Piri Reis map, a piece of gazelle skin that terrified the U.S. Air Force, baffled Albert Einstein, and suggests that a high-technology civilization mapped this planet thousands of years before we did. This is a deep dive. We are going to go through the geology, the cartography, and the declassified military intelligence reports that admit the impossible is true. But before we set sail, I have a request. The algorithms that control your feed do not like this topic. They prioritize 30-second clips and celebrity gossip. They bury investigations like this. If you want to keep this signal alive, make sure you follow The Broken Truth on Spotify right now. Hit the bell icon. It's the only way to ensure you never miss an episode when we go dark. To understand why this map is such a violation of the established timeline, we have to start with the official story. We have to look at what we are supposed to believe. Let's transport ourselves back to 1929. The location is Istanbul, Turkey. The Ottoman Empire has just collapsed. The new Turkish Republic is rising from the ashes. The Topkapi Palace, once the seat of the sultans, a place of harems, eunuchs, and executioners, is being converted into a museum. A German theologian named Gustav Deissmann is hired to catalog the imperial library. He is digging through centuries of neglect. He's sifting through piles of disregarded manuscripts, looking for anything of value. On a dusty shelf, rolled up and forgotten, he finds a fragment of map parchment. It's painted on gazelle skin. It's roughly 90 centimeters by 60 centimeters. The edges are torn. He unrolls it. The colors are vivid, bright crimsons, ochres, and deep blues. It is covered in intricate calligraphy, Ottoman Turkish script. Deissmann realizes immediately that he's holding something special. He shows it to an Orientalist named Paul Cayley. Cayley reads the signature at the bottom, compressed by Piri Ibn Haji Mehmed, known as the nephew of Piri Reis in Gallipoli, in the month of Muharram of the year 919. The date corresponds to 1513 AD. This was a sensation. Why? Because in 1929, the world was obsessed with Christopher Columbus. American historians were desperate to find the lost map of Columbus, the chart he used to discover the Americas. Piri Reis, the author of this map, had written a note in the margin. He claimed that one of his source maps was a map drawn by the Janos infidel Colombo. For the mainstream historians of 1929, this was the jackpot. They thought that they had found a copy of the Columbus map. They celebrated it. It was printed in the London Illustrated News. It was hailed as a triumph of historical preservation. But then, people started looking closer. They noticed that the map didn't just show the Caribbean islands that Columbus found. It showed the coast of Brazil. It showed the Andes Mountains, which Piri Reis shouldn't have known about in 1513. It showed the Falkland Islands, which wouldn't be discovered until 1592. And most disturbing of all, it showed a landmass running along the bottom of the world. Now, we must pause and look at the official history of Antarctica to understand why this is impossible. If you open a standard textbook today, it will tell you that the Greeks hypothesized a southern continent. Aristotle argued that there must be land in the south to balance the land in the north, or the earth would topple over. He called it Antarcticos, opposite the bear, the constellation Ursa Major, but nobody had seen it. Fast forward to the age of exploration. In 1773, Captain James Cook, the greatest navigator of his age, crossed the Antarctic Circle. He sailed further south than any man before him. What did he see? He saw ice. He saw an impenetrable barrier of packed ice. He saw gray fog. He saw storms that could snap a mast like a twig. Cook wrote in his journal, "The risk one runs in exploring a coast in these unknown and icy seas is so very great that I can be bold enough to say that no man will ever venture farther than I have done, and that the lands which may lie to the south will never be explored." Cook turned back. He never saw the land. He only saw the frozen shield guarding it. It wasn't until 1820, 307 years after Piri Reis drew his map, that a Russian expedition led by Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen finally sighted the ice shelf on the continent. Remember that date. The official narrative states clearly, no human eyes saw Antarctica before 1820. Even when they did see it, they saw an ice shelf, not the land. The land of Antarctica has been fully covered by ice for millions of years. So, how does the mainstream explain the Piri Reis map? When you ask a skeptical historian or a debunker about the Piri Reis map, they will give you a very standard, rehearsed answer. They will say, it's not Antarctica, it's just South America bent sideways. Their argument goes like this. Piri Reis was drawing on a piece of expensive gazelle skin. He was drawing the coast of Brazil, heading south. He realized he was running out of parchment. He didn't want to start over, so he just curved the coastline of South America to the right, sweeping it eastward to fit it on the page. They say the mountains are just decoration. They say the rivers are just fantasy. They say the fact that it looks like Antarctica is a coincidence, a case of pareidolia, like seeing a face in the clouds. They point out that the map is filled with mythical creatures. There are drawings of dog-headed men. There are drawings of strange beasts. They say, look, this is a medieval document full of superstition. You can't trust the geography. And for a long time, that explanation worked. It was safe. It kept the timeline intact. It kept the history books closed. It allowed historians to say, Piri Reis was a great admiral, but he was just copying bad data and made a drawing error. But there was a problem with the bent South America theory. In the mid-20th century, we developed technology that Piri Reis could never have dreamed of. We developed seismic sounding. We developed satellites. We developed the ability to see through the ice. And when we pointed those instruments at Quinn Maud Land in Antarctica, the data didn't match the modern maps of the ice. It matched the map from 1513. The drawing error turned out to be a precise geological chart of the subglacial bedrock. The skeptics can explain away a bent coastline. They cannot explain away a mountain range that is buried under 2 kilometers of ice, appearing on a map 400 years before we knew it existed. This is where the official story breaks. This is where we have to leave the safety of the classroom and enter the realm of the impossible. Because Piri Reis didn't just draw a map. He left us a bibliography. He told us where he got the information, and that admission is more terrifying than the map itself. He wrote, This section is based on the maps of the ancient kings. Who were the ancient kings, and how did they map the world from the sky? Let's look at the cracks. The official story relies on the idea that Piri Reis was just guessing, that he bent South America to fit the page, that he was an artist, not a scientist. But Piri Reis was an admiral in the Ottoman Navy. In 1513, if an admiral made a mistake on a map, ships sank, men died. The Sultan did not forgive incompetence. Naval charts were state secrets, guarded with lives, and they had to be functional. So let's test the map, not as a piece of art, but as a navigational instrument. The first crack in the narrative is a problem of mathematics, specifically the problem of longitude. For those who skipped geography class, latitude is easy. Latitude is your position north or south. You can find it by looking at the North Star or the sun at noon. Ancient sailors could calculate latitude with a stick and a piece of string. But longitude, your position east or west, this is a nightmare. To calculate longitude, you need to know the exact time at your current location and the exact time at a home port simultaneously. The difference in time tells you how far you have traveled around the globe. To do that, you need a clock that doesn't lose a second, even when a ship is rocking in a hurricane, soaking in salt water, and freezing in the Atlantic. Humanity did not solve this problem until the 1760s. That is when John Harrison invented the H4 marine chronometer. It was the moon landing project of the 18th century. Before the 1760s, every map had terrible longitude errors. Columbus, for example, was wildly wrong about distances. He thought Cuba was Japan. But when we analyze the Piri Reis map, the longitudes are accurate. In the 1960s, Charles Hapgood, a professor of history at Keene State College, decided to treat the Piri Reis map as a mathematical puzzle. He wasn't looking for hidden treasures. He was looking for grid lines. He noticed that the map didn't use the standard grid we use today, which is the Mercator projection. It used something else. It used a series of wind roses, energy points radiating out from a center. Hapgood and his students spent years reverse engineering the myth. They found that the map was constructed using a spherical trigonometry projection. Spherical trigonometry is the math required to flatten a round object onto a square surface without distortion. It requires knowing the exact circumference of the Earth. Eratosthenes, the Greek librarian, had estimated the Earth's circumference in 240 BC, but he was off. His maps were crude. The Piri Reis map, however, places the coast of South America and the coast of Africa in the correct relative longitude to within half a degree. Let me repeat that. A map drawn in 1513 using source maps from the 4th century BC, according to Piri Reis, has a longitudinal accuracy that European sailors wouldn't achieve until the invention of the atomic clock's grandfather in the 18th century. How did the ancient kings know the exact size of the Earth? How did they calculate longitude without mechanical clocks? But the math is just the appetizer. The main course is the geology. Let's go back to the bent South America theory. The skeptics say the bottom of the map is just the coast of Argentina curved sideways. Hapgood looked at that curve. He realized something familiar about the distortion. If you take a globe, a physical ball, and you take a photograph of it from far away, the countries on the edges of the sphere look distorted. They look stretched and curved because of the perspective. Hapgood found that if you take a modern map of the world and project it using a specific mathematical formula called an equidistant projection centered on Cairo, the distortion matches the Piri Reis map perfectly. This implies the mapmaker wasn't looking at the world from the deck of a ship. They were looking at it from a mathematical perspective centered on Egypt. And when you apply that projection, the bent South America aligns perfectly with the coast of Queen Maud Land, Antarctica. And this is where the official story dies. The Piri Reis map shows a series of islands off the coast of this southern land. Modern glaciers cover these islands, merging them into the mainland ice shelf. On a modern map, it looks like one solid white mass. But in 1949, the Norwegian, British, Swedish Antarctic expedition did seismic surveys. They shot sound waves through the ice to see what was underneath. They found that under the ice, the mainland was actually composed of separate islands. The Piri Reis map shows them as islands. Modern maps show them as solid ice. Only seismic radar shows them as islands again. The Piri Reis map shows a mountain range deep inland. Today, that range is buried under ice, but we know it's there because of satellite radar. The map shows river mouths. Today, there are no rivers in Antarctica. It's a frozen desert. but core samples taken from the Ross Sea floor show layers of fine-grained sediment, the kind of silt that is only deposited by flowing rivers from a temperature climate. This is the smoking gun. If Piri Reis was just making it up, he should have drawn dragons, or a void, or a giant wall. Instead, he drew the geological reality of Antarctica as it existed before the ice.
Sorry to interrupt your regularly scheduled podcast, but this episode is brought to you by the Broken Truth merch. Support the show. Wear the truth. Official Broken Truth podcast merch is live now. Links in the description. And since you've made it this far in the episode, comment hashtag Broken Truth and leave us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. Because when you speak up, the algorithm listens. And so does the world.
He drew the subglacial topography. This leaves us with two terrifying possibilities. Possibility 1, Piri Reis or the ancient kings he copied had ground-penetrating radar technology that could see through a malleable of ice. Possibility 2, the map was drawn when there was no ice. If we accept possibility 2, we have to ask, when was Antarctica last ice-free? Standard geology says millions of years ago, before humans existed. But if a human drew this map, then standard geology is wrong, or standard history is wrong. It is possible that the Ice Age ended much more recently than we think, or is it possible that a civilization existed millions of years ago? There's a third anomaly, one that is often overlooked. The map shows the Amazon River, but it doesn't show the Amazon as we know it today. It shows the island of Marajo, which sits at the mouth of the Amazon, differently. On modern maps, Marajo is an island. On the Piri Reis map, it is attached to the mainland. Geologists have studied the silt deposits of the Amazon. They have confirmed that thousands of years ago, water levels were lower and Marajo was attached to the mainland. The map is geologically correct for a specific time period. That time period is the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. We're not looking at a medieval map. We're looking at a time capsule. We are looking at a document that preserved the geography of the world from the era of Atlantis or the Great Flood, or whatever name you want to give to the lost epoch. The skeptics say it's a coincidence, but how many coincidences are allowed before it becomes a pattern? Accurate longitude, check. Correct subglacial islands, check. Correct paleogeography of the Amazon, check. Spherical projection requiring advanced calculus, check. This isn't a crack in the narrative. This is the narrative shattering into 1,000 pieces. And if this map is real, it means someone was sailing the oceans, mapping the continents, and using advanced mathematics at a time when we were supposed to be hunting woolly mammoths with stone spears. The evidence suggests that the history of human civilization is much older and much more cyclical than we are allowed to believe. If you're enjoying the investigation so far, follow The Broken Truth on Spotify. It helps the show reach more people searching for the truth. Every follow pushes the show up the charts and forces the algorithm to acknowledge that people want answers. So if the map is real, who drew the source maps? Was it the Phoenicians? Was it a lost civilization? Or was it something else entirely? To answer that, we have to look at the theories that got professors fired and scientists ridiculed. We have to look at the forbidden explanations. The alternate theories. We are staring at a crime scene where the evidence doesn't fit the timeline. We have a map of a coastline that should be buried under the ice. We have mathematics that shouldn't exist for another 3 centuries. So how do we solve this? When the impossible happens, we have to throw out the rulebook. We have to look at the theories that mainstream archaeology refuses to touch. We have 3 theories. They range from the historically plausible to the geologically catastrophic, all the way to the edge of science fiction. Let's start with the theory that keeps humanity safe. Theory 1, the Lost Mariners. This is the theory of the mother civilization. Historians tell us that civilization began in Sumeria and Egypt around 3000 to 4000 BC. Before that, we were great hunter-gatherers. But this theory suggests that we are missing a massive chapter. It suggests that around the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 BC, there was a global seafaring civilization. They weren't aliens, they didn't have spaceships, but they had ships, good ones. They knew how to navigate by the stars. They knew the math of the sphere. Imagine a civilization like the Phoenicians or the Vikings, but existing thousands of years earlier than we think possible. They sailed the world. They mapped the coastlines for trade and exploration. At that time, the world looked different. The sea levels were lower, the Sahara was green, and perhaps, just perhaps, the coastline of Antarctica was not yet fully frozen. The theory goes that this civilization was destroyed, maybe by a flood, maybe by a comet, maybe by the rapid end of the Ice Age. Their cities were drowned, their people were scattered, but their maps survived. They were copied by Egyptians, copied by Greeks, stored in the Great Library of Alexandria. When the library burned, most were lost, but a few copies were smuggled out to Constantinople, where they eventually found their way to Piri Reis. This theory is seductive. It explains the map without breaking the laws of physics. It just requires us to admit that we aren't the first advanced sailors on Earth. But it has a flaw. It doesn't explain why Antarctica froze, and it doesn't explain why the freezing happened so fast that animals were flash frozen in the mud. For that, we need a theory that terrified Albert Einstein. Theory 2, Earth crust displacement. In 1953, Charles Hapgood presented a theory that was so radical he struggled to find a publisher. He didn't argue that the climate changed. He argued that the Earth moved. We are taught about continental drift, the slow inch-by-inch movement of plates over millions of years. That is standard science. Hapgood proposed Earth crust displacement. Imagine the Earth is an orange. The orange has a skin, the crust, and the fruit inside, the mantle. The skin is not glued to the fruit. It's loose. Hapgood argued that every few thousand years, the weight of the ice caps becomes off balance. The centrifugal force of the spinning Earth causes the entire crust, the whole skin, to slip over the core. If this happened, it wouldn't take millions of years. It would be a cataclysm. Imagine if North America suddenly slid 2,000 miles south to the equator. Imagine if Antarctica, which was sitting in a temperature zone, suddenly slid 2,000 miles south to the pole. The continent would go from a temperature climate to a deep freeze, essentially overnight. The rivers would freeze in their tracks, the animals would freeze where they stood, the snow would pile up, burying the mountains and the forests under a mile of ice. Hapgood argued that the Piri Reis map shows Antarctica before the last displacement. It shows the continent when it was in warmer latitude. This sounds insane, but do you know who wrote the foreword to Hapgood's book? Albert Einstein. Einstein reviewed the math, he reviewed the physics, and he wrote, "I find this idea very impressive. One can hardly doubt that significant shifts of the Earth's crust have taken place repeatedly and within a short time. If Einstein is right, then the map isn't just a map. It's a snapshot of the world before the apocalypse. It's a warning that the ground beneath our feet is not as stable as we think." Theory 3, high-tech prehistory. But there's one final theory, and this is the most uncomfortable of all. It comes back to the projection. Remember how the Air Force and Hapgood realized the map is an equidistant projection centered on Cairo. This is a very specific type of map. It is the kind of map you get when you look at a sphere from a single point of altitude. If you stand on the ground, you can't draw this map. You can't see the curvature. You can't see the way the continents distort at the edges. To draw the Piri Reis map with this specific distortion, you have to see the Earth from above, way above. The mathematical center of the map is located near Cairo, Egypt. If you were to place a satellite in a stationary orbit above Cairo and take a photograph, the resulting image would match the distortion of the Piri Reis map. The skeptics say this is a coincidence, but the believers ask a simple question. How did the ancient kings know what the world looked like from space? Did the civilization that drew the source maps have flight? Did they have balloons? Or did they have something else? In the ancient texts of India, the Mahabharata, they speak of Vimanas, flying machines that could map the earth and destroy cities. In the texts of Sumeria, they speak of the Anunnaki, who viewed the world from the heavens. Is the Piri Reis map evidence that high-altitude aerial survey technology existed on Earth 10,000 years ago? It sounds like a conspiracy theory. It sounds like science fiction. Until you open the filing cabinets of the United States Air Force. Because the military didn't just look at this map and laugh. They looked at this map, compared it to their own classified reconnaissance data, and they got scared. Coming up next, we're going to read the declassified letter from the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron, the letter where the US military admits that the impossible map is accurate. We can speculate about lost civilizations and shifting crusts all day. Theories are cheap. Evidence is expensive. And usually, when we talk about ancient mysteries, the evidence is vague. It's a blurry photo. It's a translation of a poem. It's a feeling. But today, we have something rare. We have a document stamped by the United States military. Let's go back to 1960. The Cold War is in full swing. The United States Air Force is obsessed with mapping the globe. They need precise geodetic data for ICBM targeting. They need to know exactly where every continent is, down to the meter. Professor Charles Hapgood, having done his math on the Piri Reis map, decided to do something bold. He didn't submit his findings to an archaeological journal. He knew that they would laugh at him. He submitted them to the Strategic Air Command. Specifically, he sent his analysis to the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron at Westover Air Force Base. These are not poets. These are not historians. These are men whose job is to analyze aerial photography and radar data to guide nuclear weapons. They deal in cold, hard, verifiable reality. Hapgood asked them a simple question. Does this map from 1513 accurately depict the coast of Antarctica under the ice? He expected a polite dismissal, a form letter saying, "Thank you for your interest." Instead, on July 6, 1960, he received a reply from Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Oldemeyer, the commander of the squadron. "Dear Professor Hapgood, your request for evaluation of certain unusual features of the Piri Reis map of 1513 by this organization has been reviewed. The claim that the lower part of the map portrays the Princess Martha coast of Queen Maud Land, Antarctica, and the Palmer Peninsula is reasonable. We find that this is the most logical and in all probability the correct interpretation of the map." Let's pause there. The US Air Force just admitted that a 16th century map shows Antarctica. But Colonel Oldemeyer wasn't done. He went on to validate the impossible. The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the result of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish, British, Norwegian Antarctic expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap. The Air Force is confirming that the map shows the subglacial bedrock. They are confirming that the drawing error matches the seismic data. And then, Colonel Oldemeyer delivers the final blow to the official timeline. The ice cap in this region is now about 1 mile thick. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of geographical knowledge in 1513. We have no idea. When the US military says we have no idea, it means the paradigm is broken. It means the facts on the table contradict the reality we are taught in school. This letter is not a conspiracy theory. It is a real document. You can look it up in the Library of Congress. It is a formal admission that our history is wrong. But Piri Reis isn't the only witness. Once you start looking for these impossible maps, you find more. Let me introduce you to Orontius Phineas, map of 1531. Orontius Phineas was a French mathematician and cartographer. In 1531, he drew a map of the world, and on his map, Antarctica is there. But unlike Piri Reis, who only showed a fragment of the coast, Phineas shows the entire continent. He shows the whole shape, and he shows it with mountain ranges. He shows it with rivers flowing from the mountains down to the sea. Modern scientists looked at the Orontius Phineas map and focused on the Ross Sea. Today, the Ross Sea is home to the Ross Ice Shelf. It is a massive floating glacier, hundreds of feet thick. You cannot sail into it. But the Phineas map shows the Ross Sea as an open bay. No ice, just water. It shows estuaries. It shows rivers flowing into the bay. So science decided to check the map against the mud. In the mid-20th century, researchers from the Carnegie Institution of Washington took core samples from the bottom of the Ross Sea. They drilled through the ice, through the water, and into the sea floor. They pulled up tubes of sediment. They wanted to see what the history of that ocean floor looked like. If the Ross Sea had been frozen for millions of years, the sediment would be glacial marine, messy and mixed with rocks dropped by the ice. But that's not what they found. In the layers dating back to roughly 4000 BC, they found fine-grained sediment. Why does fine-grain matter? Because fine-grained sediment is only created by one thing: running water and rivers. It means that rivers were flowing off the continent of Antarctica and depositing silt into an open, ice-free sea. The core samples prove that the rivers on the Orontius Phineas map were real. They proved that the Ross Sea was open. They proved that Antarctica was ice-free, or at least partially ice-free, much more recently than geology allows. The map says rivers. The core samples say rivers. The history book says impossible. We are holding the smoking gun. We have the military confirmation. We have the geological confirmation. The only thing we don't have is the explanation. If the Piri Reis map and the Orontius Phineas map are accurate, it means someone was there. It means someone was mapping it. Someone witnessed the last days of the Antarctic. And that brings us to the most disturbing question of all. If they were advanced enough to map the globe, where did they go? Why did they vanish? And is the catastrophe that wiped them out coming for us next? Why this all matters today. So why does this matter? Why should you, driving to work or sitting in your living room in the 21st century, care about a piece of gazelle skin from 1513? Why does it matter if Antarctica was mapped by a lost civilization? It matters because it changes the definition of who we are. We are raised with a very specific story of humanity. We are told that we are the apex, we are the first. We're the only time this planet has ever hosted a global technological society. We look at the past and we see primitives. We see stone tools. We see ignorance. But the Piri Reis map looks back at us and laughs. It tells us that we are not the first. We are just the survivors. If the Piri Reis map is real, and the Air Force says it is, and the geology says it is, then civilization is not a straight line of progress. It is a cycle. It means that humanity has risen to great heights before. We have mapped the globe before. We have mastered mathematics before. And then, something happened. The map is a warning. It shows us Antarctica before the ice, but it also implies the speed of the catastrophe. The Hapgood theory, the one Einstein supported, suggests that the crust shifted and the climate flipped in a matter of days or weeks. It tells us that the Earth is not a stable platform. It is a violent, dynamic engine that can erase a civilization in the blink of an eye. Think about our world today. We rely on fragile systems. Our internet, our power grids, our supply chains. We think they are permanent. But the people who drew the source maps for Piri Reis probably thought their world was permanent too. They had their own technology. They had their own trade routes. They had their own unsinkable ships. And now they are gone. Their cities are under the ocean. Their libraries are dust. And the only thing left of them is a copy of a map, drawn by an Ottoman admiral who didn't even understand what he was drawing. This story matters because it is about amnesia. We are a species with amnesia. We have forgotten our own history. We are walking through the ruins of a great house, thinking we are the ones who built it. The Piri Reis map is a crack in the wall of that amnesia. It lets the light in. It forces us to ask, if we lost the history of the Antarctica map, what else have we lost? What medical knowledge? What energy technology? What understanding of the cosmos? In an age of censorship, where information is curated and narratives are controlled, the Piri Reis map is a rebellious object. It is a physical piece of proof that the experts can be wrong. It is proof that the textbooks can be outdated. It reminds us that the truth is not always found in the center of the spotlight. Sometimes the truth is rolled up in a dusty corner of a library, waiting for someone brave enough to unroll it. The ice of Antarctica has evolved, and one day the ice will melt, or we will drill deep enough and we will find the truth. But until then, we have a map, and the map says, you are not alone in history. The Piri Reis map remains in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. It is rarely shown to the public. They say it is too fragile. They say the light damages the ink. But maybe, just maybe, they keep it in the dark because it shines too much light on the things they want to keep hidden. Thank you for listening to this investigation. We have peeled back the layers of the official story, looked at the impossible math, and read the military admission that history is wrong. But the investigation doesn't stop here. Follow The Broken Truth on Spotify right now. Click the follow button, click the bell. The algorithm hates this show, but your support keeps us alive. Share this episode with a friend who thinks they know history. And give us a 5-star review on Spotify to help soar us through the algorithm. I'm your host, Garrett, and this is The Broken Truth. Remember, the truth is out there, but you have to know where to look.
In a world built on hidden histories and half-truths, we've only just begun to peel back the layers. Because what you've heard tonight was never meant to be known, but you were meant to find it. If you're ready to go deeper, leave us a review, comment your thoughts, share this episode, and step inside the archives. Join the inner circle, where the real evidence is kept. This is The Broken Truth, because the truth isn't whole, it's broken.